Alright, good morning all. What I want to do this morning real quick is show you how I laid out my plywood floor and cut it in one shot without using a paper or cardboard cutout template first. I've seen a few videos where putting the paper down and tracing the paper to the wall or the floor, then taking that tracing, cutting it out, laying it onto plywood and tracing that mark and then cutting the plywood. So this is how I did it, bypassing those two steps and just going directly from measurement to the cut. So I'm going to show you with the second sheet of plywood going on the passenger side and use that as my tutorial. So what I have here, now here's the seam between the two sheets of plywood. So this is the plywood going to the driver's side and this is going to the passenger side. So you always need a straight edge to measure from. So what I did initially was take this straight edge and I measured several points wherever the plywood was going to be and got the largest measurement. So you go along the support here, the rib, against the back wall, in front of the wheel well to here. Now here's my straight edge again, all the way, the seam, all the way along. I think my biggest measurement was maybe 27 inches. So in one of my earlier videos you saw me rip this piece from a 4x8 sheet. I think I ripped it at 28 inches or something like that. That way I would have that extra inch to play with if I needed it. Then once you had that sheet ripped, one edge is your factory straight edge. That's the edge you use where you butt up the two sheets together. You start measuring. Use a square if you want. It would be the best way. And get it right on the line there and measure a bunch of points, starting at your edge and all along the edge here, and you measure where you want your plywood to end. So from here to the seam is 23 5/8. Over here 23 5/8. Now you go back to this rib. Of course I got the half-inch plywood there, but that's 26 inches, and measure a bunch of points all along. And then on your plywood, let's see if I have something right here. Let's assume this was my piece of plywood. You measure from this factory edge where you're going to seam them together, and you measure from here back in the same point. This was what, 23 inches? And you mark 23 inches. You mark 23 inches. You mark 26 inches, whatever the numbers are. The more points you use along the way, the more accurate your cut's going to be. Here's a little diagram here I drew. Do it over here in the shade. And this simulates, here's the seam. This here's the contour of the wall. Here's your wheel well. Here's a rib. Here's a rib. Here's this corner rib over here. Now you just take straight measurements from this seam to the rib, from this seam to the rib, from this seam to the wall. Just keep doing that all along, and those numbers you transfer onto your plywood. You start at this edge, the straight edge, and if the first number was 26, you measure 26 inches square, put a mark. Next one, 26 inches, put a mark. Next one, 28 inches, whatever it is, you put a mark. That way you have a connected dot system, and once you connect all those dots together, you'll have this exact profile of the van wall laid out on your plywood. There won't be any tracings and transferring to do. So every time you trace and transfer, you have room for error. If you're off for a 1/4 inch, your cut's going to be off a 1/4 inch, etc. So, and the more measurements you take at each point where there's a fluctuation, the more points you transfer onto your plywood, the more accurate your cut's going to be. So if you did 1,000 points along the way and connect all those dots, you'd have almost a near perfect cut every time. You can't go wrong. So that's how I did it. Now you could do this with the wall panels, you could do this with the flooring, you could do this with anything. You could do it, you're putting up sheetrock in a house, you could do it the same way. Always start with that straight line. Always measure from the same line all the time, and make sure your measurements are square to that line, and you transfer those measurements to your piece you're going to cut, and you come up with a nice cut every time. Now mine, it's pretty decent. I didn't go crazy. I left room so it wouldn't squeak, movement, And I got around here, I measured, you know, several points along the way here, and transferred those numbers onto the plywood. This piece right here, and you can see there's little ribs along here from the manufacturing. I use those as my square lines, so I measured on those lines and transferred the numbers on. You can see where the line is, and that's how I did it. And as you see, I think it came out pretty good. If I made more measurements, I would have had a more perfect fit. So that's how to do it. So I hope that helps you all out, and you understood that. Leave me a comment if you want. Let me know if you need any clarification, and I'll be glad to respond. All right, so we'll talk to you in a little bit.